What's up, guys? Barbarian Bust here today with the PTR. I wasn't able to play as much as I wanted to on the PTR. I had quite a busy weekend, but I did get to try out my Rend Barb, and surprisingly, I think the Shattered Vow might be best in slot. I feel like it's tied with the Grandfather. I also tried a regular sword with as many ranks as I could get to cut to the bone, and I did try the Fields of Crimson, but because this isn't item power 800, I feel like it wasn't really a fair test. While I was running pits, Shattered Vow and Grandfather cleared 73, regular sword cleared 72, and the Fields of Crimson cleared pit 70. And I thought I would kind of show off here the kind of damage that this thing does, instead of showing 4 pit runs. So with this weapon, you want to hit Steel Grasp or Wrath of the Berserker first. Get some Fury going, and then just hit Rend, and just hold it there. And as long as you have Berserking, you get the increased attack speed. And this weapon is super cool as it will execute enemies as long as they have less health. Super cool, really like it. And with this weapon, you actually don't need to use Rupture. If you use Rupture, it actually hinders the weapon. That's kind of cool. For the next one, we have to take out Executioner, and we have to input Seething. Let's try the Grandfather, see how that looks. Get some Berserking going in the build. Attack speed not as fast. Always important to get Berserking in every build. But this one is still good, but it doesn't ramp up your damage as fast as it does with the Shattered Vow. So Shattered Vow might have an edge on the Grandfather, hard to say. This one's still doing very well though. So these are going to be your 2 top weapons still for a bleed build. And this one you can also use Gushing Wounds, which is great as well. Next is the Wanton's Rupture Sword. This sword, and with all these weapons, we have max levels of Cut to the Bone of 32. And because we have so many ranks of Cut to the Bone, that also increases our bleeding effect, which is our damage over time. This is why I did put damage over time on all my gems. And as you see, I don't have any critical strike damage. Just kind of make the test a little bit more simple, where this really scales with critical strike. This does scale with damage over time, but also Cut to the Bone scales with damage over time, Gushing Wound scales with damage over time, and critical strike damage. Because the first part of it reads your critical strike chance to increase the bleed amount. The bleeding amount would be your damage over time amount. With just a regular sword in the mix, this did surprisingly well. So one thing I do like about this build is that even if you do just have a regular sword, you can still do significant damage. Obviously it won't be good as a Mythic Unique, but as you see here, the numbers are pretty decent. The Grandfather got 6.6 million. This one is still hitting a solid 4.5, and now we're reaching into the 5 territory. We had some numbers in the 6 there. So even a regular sword is going to do quite well. And with the Fields of Crimson, it is really unfortunate I couldn't find one with a greater affix. This one we have to Rupture first. And then you just give her. So as you see, this does the least amount of damage. Part of that is because it is only level 750. And it's not Masterwork. It's missing 8 Masterworkings, which gives quite a significant amount of damage. But also you have to use Rupture as well. As you see, this one is really capping out around 4. Still a great weapon, it'll still work, but for higher end content, Mythic Uniques are always going to be the best. Those were the 4 weapons that I did try for my Rend build, and I was really surprised that just the regular sword did so well. And it was great and disappointing that the Fields of Crimson is kind of at the bottom of the barrel again. I felt Season 5 Fields of Crimson was great for a bleed build. along with the grandfather, and a regular sword wasn't that good at all. So knowing that the Fields of Crimson it's viable for bleed, but it's kind of sad that a regular sword is better. That's not good. But some things I wanted to talk about with the PTR is the item power 800. These weapons are amazing, and if you find them, that's how you're going to get to World Tier 4. You really need the 2 temper slots, and the greater affix is just icing on the cake. But the fact that you can masterwork these to 12, and you can't masterwork 750 to 12, really sucks. And that 750 items can only have 1 temper also feels bad. I think you should be able to masterwork 750 items to 8 and have 2 temper slots. That way, you wouldn't be penalized for not being able to find 800 item power. All of these came from the obol vendor. If I didn't spend 30,000 obols, I would not have greater affix gears. Greater affix items drop so low, and it feels bad. It really does feel bad. Torment 4 is almost locked behind these items. Because, for example, I have 2 resistances here, and I still don't have cold resistance maxed out. I use a potion for it. But if I only had 1 temper, I couldn't use Rend size, and it would just feel too limiting. Can you get to World Tier 4 with 750 item power? Absolutely, but it doesn't feel good. You really have to pick and choose what you're going to cut out of your build. So that is one thing I really wish they change. With just item power 750 items, that would be great. Give us 1 more temper slot and let us masterwork it to 8, where these can still be the actual chase items. And hopefully they can increase the drop rate, because it was so low. Honestly, it was awful. It didn't feel good at all. I mean, they shouldn't drop like candy, but they were so low. I received 3 in total from the ground, and the rest were obols. And bricking a greater affix item feels terrible, because they are so rare to get, and it's literally just awful. It makes you want to quit the game. Another thing that made me want to quit the game, surprisingly, was leveling. I found leveling was super boring. From before, you're going to World Tier 2 to World Tier 3, you're rushing into World Tier 4. Now you're at 1 difficulty and you're stuck, and you're just trying to make it to the end game. There's no goals in leveling anymore where you're trying to rush to the end of something. Now it's flat. So leveling seems boring and bad, even though it's still as fast. With the Paragon board, it looks a little nicer, but overall, some of the changes they made in the board I feel aren't necessary. I do like how this is spread out a little more and you have 2 paths to choose from. And I do like how the glyphs can now go out to 5. Most of the glyphs are awesome, some of them kind of suck. And also, if you look at our Paragon points, we have 214. That's actually 11 less than what you have at level 100 in Season 5. And because we're limited to 5 boards, it feels bad. For example, we don't need these points here, and we don't need these points here. And we don't need these points here. And I'm just getting these points over here, even though they're not really 100% necessary. So right now we have 21 extra points that we don't fully need. And having those extra points that I did just respend, it feels bad. Like we could almost take another board now. Well, we could take another board if we were not limited to 5, because all these extras don't really do that much for the build. And because of what we take, we don't need to take some of these extra nodes here to give us increased power. So that does feel bad. I can't see anyone really needing 300 points, because you're just be taking more nodes inside here, and that's really going to be it. We take all of the blue and yellow nodes here on this board, and we don't take these ones, but we could later on, and we don't need any more vulnerable damage. There's really nothing to take left on these boards. Like maybe some damage reduction, fine, but we don't need more vulnerable armor. And same with here, we don't need more berserking. 25 life for 5 seconds. I don't know how good that's going to feel. There's not really much to take when you have 300 Paragon points, because we're at 214 and I kind of don't know where else to spend them. Like again, I'm going to get a couple extra here, not really needed. That's really about it. So hopefully they can bump that up to 6, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not going to hold my breath. Let's talk about the Paragon Glyphs. The Glyphs, most of them are great. Ambidextrous, great. Blood Feeder, not so great. Ambidextrous, it says, legendary bonus, increased damage by 20% X. Great. Blood Feeder, legendary bonus, 28% X increased damage to healthy enemies. Garbage. Healthy characters have more than 80% of their life. For literally 20% of the fight, you're going to deal almost 30% extra damage, and then now this bonus is now void. It's null. It does nothing. Why doesn't this deal more damage to bleeding enemies? Why doesn't this do anything else? When we are dealing damage to healthy enemies, I think that feels bad, and I don't want to take Blood Feeder anymore. I was really hoping that they would do something better with this glyph. For example, the Brawl glyph deals damage to brawling skills. Brawling skills deal 18% X increased damage. And the bonus, now it deals 36.5% X more damage. That's amazing. Same with the new glyph Challenger. Increased damage to elites. That can be used by all classes. That's amazing. You could put that on Blood Feeder. That would be a great change. Cleaver already deals extra bonus to critical strike damage. Now it deals even more to critical strike damage. That's still amazing. With the Crusher glyph, this one, the increased damage to stun targets, I think that's good. I think it would have been cool if they also could have done overpower damage, but either or seems good. But this one's just okay. The Disembowel glyph, this one I think is good, not great. Again, why doesn't the legendary bonus say increase to damage over time by X amount of damage instead of vulnerable damage? That I wish they would change. The Dominate glyph deals with overpower damage, your additional bonus deals more overpowers, and your legendary bonus deals more overpower damage. I think that's great. Why didn't they do that with Disembowel? Why didn't do that with Blood Feeder? Exploit, I think this is another great one. Deals with vulnerable damage, and the legendary bonus also increases that damage. That's great. Ire, this one I don't quite understand. This is the only one that deals increased damage to close enemies. I thought this would be on the Territorial glyph, but the Territorial glyph only increases damage to vulnerable targets. So we have 3 glyphs that increase damage to vulnerable targets. Why isn't this to close targets? Just like the Mighty glyph, this one deals damage to healthy enemies. The Mighty glyph and the Ambidextrous glyph are pretty similar, as in this deals 8% to one hand, this deals 8% to two hand. Why don't they just increase the damage by 20%, just like on the Ambidextrous one? It doesn't make sense that they change this to damage to healthy enemies. In my opinion, now the Might glyph kind of sucks. I wouldn't take this right now. So I don't know why they made that change. This should change to match this. Mortal Draw is another great one where it increases damage to elites. Most of these glyphs either increase your damage, increase your vulnerable damage, or increase your critical strike damage. I think those are 3 really good options, and there are some glyphs like the Weapon Master glyph that increase specific skills that those skills use. I think this is great. Doesn't make sense why Disembowel doesn't do a % increase to damage over time. Doesn't make sense why Blood Feeder only deals more damage to healthy enemies. That's now useless. Same with Might. And it doesn't make sense that Territorial deals increased damage to vulnerable targets and not close enemies. If you see here, there's a very clear picture of Overpower glyph gets the damage increased to overpower. Same with Vulnerable. Same with Dust Devil glyph. Same with the Earthquake glyph. Same with the Weapon Master glyph. So why does the Disembowel glyph go to vulnerable, the Blood Feeder glyph just go to healthy, and same with Might go to healthy enemies? I think that's a really stupid change. I found the runes were good, not great. And I say good, not great because I do notice that they do increase our damage, but you don't really know when they proc except for these little symbols down here. And I feel like with something that they're trying to show, give you more power, it'd be cool if it did some sort of animation so you knew it was active, except for having another little square down on your bar here. That's just a personal preference. I think that would just kind of mean a little more and it would feel a little cooler. Overall, I think if they could make a couple changes with the PTR, Season 6 is going to be a lot of fun. I look forward to Bleed in Season 6, and I also look forward to trying some more Dust Devil Earthquake builds, considering that is what they're pushing really heavily on the Barb, and they are very, very powerful. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.